Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Dan Illman here, taking a look at race number 11 at Churchill Downs on Turkey Day. It is the Grade 2 Falls City Handicap. Let's take a look at this field of fillies and mares getting set to go 1 1/8 miles. $200,000 is the purse. And as you can see, the odds-on favorite, and deservedly so, is the number 1, Divine Miss Gray. Her last 3 Beyer speed figures, 90, 90, and 92, are faster than any other dirt Beyer speed figure earned by the rest of the field combined. Divine Miss Gray is simply the fastest horse on the Beyer scale coming into this race. But she's far from a slam dunk if you believe that the 1 1/8 distance is an obstacle for Divine Miss Gray. A filly that's only raced once at the distance, was a good second behind Wowcat in the Grade 1 Beldame that day, but has competed mostly in sprints and middle distances. She looked good in her most recent race at Churchill Downs, a 1-turn mile on the Breeders' Cup Classic undercard, the Grade 2 Chaluki Stakes. That day she prompted the pace, took over at will 3 furlongs from home, floated another rival out turning into the stretch, and held sway under a heavy drive. The Timeform US pace projector has the speedy Divine Miss Gray on the lead, and barring a disastrous break, Tyler Gaffalione is going to have her on the lead. So in this situation, if this pace projector plays out, we have the best horse getting the best trip. The key is whether the 4 Skeptic or the number 7 Honor Ride push Divine Miss Gray hard early, forcing her to perhaps sap her strength for the stretch drive. If Divine Miss Gray gets away with an easy lead, I think she can get the 1 1/8 miles. In her one and only race at a 1 1/8 miles, she earned a 90 Beyer speed figure. Again, that Beyer speed figure would qualify as faster than any other dirt Beyer earned by the rest of the field at any distance. If Divine Miss Gray wins a 90 Beyer, it's possible she wins this race, and she could do it right on the lead. Number 2 is Mannerly, and Mannerly looked like she was going to be on her way to doing some nice things. She won at Keeneland during the spring, and then has just been a start and stop season for Brendan Walsh. A layoff, and then a disappointing performance in the Obeah. A layoff, and then a good effort in the Locust Grove at Churchill Downs behind the quality Churchill-loving Blue Prize. And then last time out, I'm willing to forgive that race. I know it doesn't look good on paper, especially when she was sent off as the 13-10 favorite, but there was just no pace set on in that 1 1/16 event at Keeneland, and she was last for most of the race. She didn't do much running. At least Beach Flower, the winner of that race, came back to finish first and then was placed third via disqualification on the Grade 3 Dowager Stakes on the turf. Mannerly is a bit of an in-and-outer. She's got to prove herself at a 1 1/8 miles. She's a horse that I would relegate to the bottom of exotic wagers if I'm going to use her. The number 3 Dutch Parrot is coming into this race in good form, and she handles a 1 1/8 miles in Churchill Downs without any sort of problems. In fact, she scored last time out at Churchill in the non-winners of 3 other than race. Now, she got a great pace set up that day. Timeform US has the fractions for that day color-coded red. Dutch Parrot was lagging far behind that fast pace. She came with a good run, and she scored. It was only an 81 Beyer speed figure, only a 104 Timeform US rating, a far cry from the 117 Timeform US rating that Divine Miss Gray earned in her most recent race, the Chaluki. But Dutch Parrot handles the distance, and if Divine Miss Gray is mired in a pace battle with the 4 or the 7, it could set things up. I've always liked Dutch Parrot. I've always thought she's solid, but I've also always thought that maybe she's just a notch below graded stakes class. Skeptic won at the Grade 3 Monmouth Oaks against fellow 3-year-old fillies 2 starts back, and did it in a pace-pressing fashion. They tried the Grade 1 Spinster last time out, and listen, she missed the break. She was probably overmatched. Don't take that race too seriously. The Monmouth Oaks is probably a more representative effort. The problem with the Monmouth Oaks is she only earned an 80 Beyer speed figure that day. She's lightly raced. It's quite possible this 3-year-old still has plenty of improvement, and I don't think a 1 1/8 is going to be a problem, being by Breeders' Cup winner Tis Now out of a mare, by Breeders' Cup Classic winner Awesome Again. I still think Skeptic right now is just a little bit too slow, and I'm not sure she's fast enough to push Divine Miss Gray early. I think if Divine Miss Gray falters, the number 5 Dream Call could be the one to take her down. She has winning experience at Churchill Downs, and I think getting back around 2 turns is key for Dream Call. She was no match for Divine Miss Gray when 7th in the Grade 1 Beldame, but that was a 1-turn 1 1/8 at Belmont, and she underperformed in her prior start at Belmont, a 1-turn 1 1/16. Take those races out of the past performances, you're left with good 2-turn efforts. A second in the Grade 3 Molly Pitcher finishing ahead of Divine Miss Gray, and then 2 consecutive scores at Prairie Meadows at 1.1 miles. Her buyers might have plateaued in the mid-80s. That is a concern for Dream Call. But the distance, if it's too far for Divine Miss Gray, I think Dream Call's the best closer in this field, and maybe she offers a little bit of value at 6-1. Prado's Sweet Ride goes turf to dirt for the underrated Chris Block. She's run some nice races on the dirt in the past. Second in a state-bred stakes race against males at Hawthorne in her most recent start on dirt. She has run fast on turf. She actually has eclipsed 95. She earned a 98 Beyer speed figure in graded stakes placed last summer on the turf. I just think turf is probably more of her game. Block's got her in here because 1.125 isn't going to be a problem. The 7 is Honor Ride, and Honor Ride is 20-1 on the morning line and was actually dangled in for a claiming tag 2 starts back. She failed to win, and now winners of one other than in her race around 2 turns most recently at Churchill Downs. But she's a key to this race because of her speed. And if she goes out there and pushes Divine Miss Gray, it helps the closers. I'm not sure she's fast enough to do it. I'm not sure she's good enough to keep Divine Miss Gray occupied for long. But if she does, it sets things up for others. Completing the field is Red Dane, coming off of a score at Keeneland, off the turf to dirt move for Charlie Lepresti. I like that effort for Red Dane. It was a good, solid performance, and this pedigree indicates distance is going to be no worry at all. You could move her up on a wet track. She actually earned an 89 Beyer speed figure at Keeneland during the spring meet. She has now won her last 2 races on dirt, and maybe she's a bit better than she appears on paper. I think Red Dame could come with a late run, but taking a look at my top pick, I just think the best horse gets the best trip, and she's going to overcome the distance. It's the 1 Divine Miss Gray. A lot of folks are going to single Divine Miss Gray in multiple race wagers. I'd probably use her and lean on her heavily as my only A, but I want to use Dream Call as well, getting back around 2 turns just in case Divine Miss Gray falters in that final 16th of a mile. So 1 and 5 for me in the multis, 1, 5, 7, 3 for me as my top 4 selections in the Grade 2 Fall City Handicap. It's race number 11 at Churchill Downs on Thursday. Happy Thanksgiving.